9:19, and I call our meeting to order on 9/19/2023 for the DC Prep Public Charter School. I'm Patrick, and I'm the board chair. So the members that we have today, I see Dan, I see Emily, I see Hadley, I see, I'm just looking, Pam. I see Tamika, I see Terry. So we constitute a quorum so we can conduct business.
Hi, Colette's here too. I'm just on my phone.
Oh, okay. Hey, Colette. Thanks.
Hi.
All right. Awesome. So we constitute a quorum. So obviously tonight we will all be on video. So our first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. So if you guys take a quick look at the agenda, and then could I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Colette?
Yes, I approve.
Dan? Sorry we have to do this.
Yep. Yes.
Emily? Hadley?
Aye.
All right. Lisa?
Approve.
Pam? Mika? Terry?
Aye.
Approve. Aye.
Thanks, everyone. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. So we'll hop right into the agenda. So just welcome back, everybody. Really happy. Hopefully everyone had a great summer. As Laura mentioned, she's putting out some fires today. So thanks for all of that, Laura. As a matter of fact, I was one of the parents that got the call to come pick my kid up from the school. And as soon as we got home, he was like, hey, can I take a shower? Because some of the water fell on me in my class. So, like, you don't have to ask to take a shower, just go. With that being said, let's take a look at our June minutes. If you haven't had an opportunity to look at those, we'll take about 2 to 3 minutes to look through those, and then we'll look to approve them.
Patrick, I just had one quick thing on the minutes. I wasn't at the meeting, so I can't comment on the substance, but it looks like maybe someone had added those minutes from like with minutes from another meeting behind them. So it just seems like we should delete the part in the back. There's like a separate section in the back.
Okay. Yep, we'll make that change.
Yeah, there must be some issue because it says, for example, that Emily seconded a motion, but she wasn't there.
Sorry about that. I will make sure that we get that cleaned up.
Is Jenny still on the board?
No.
Okay.
Well, it's factually correct. She was absent, but she probably doesn't need to get mentioned.
Well said.
All right. So here's what we'll do is, Laura, I'll ask if you make the corrections, and then we'll just approve them through email with the corrected version. Okay. The next thing we need to get approval of are the Charter Alliance dues. Laura, I think they're about 53,000, I think is what you said.
Yeah, 53,200.
Okay.
And so the way that the Alliance is a membership organization, and they do advocacy for charters across the city. We are a member of the Alliance. The service that they provide to all of us is very valuable. They do a lot of work to make sure that they keep tabs on what's happening with different city agencies, OSSI, PCSB, and then also the council. And so they're incredibly helpful both at keeping issues on charter leaders' radar and then helping to organize and mobilize us to advocate for issues that are really important. We wouldn't normally need to ask for approval from you all to pay this bill, but Terry is on their board of directors, and so it is considered a conflict of interest, a potential conflict of interest transaction. And so I need to get your approval. The thing that you should know is the way that dues are calculated is consistent across all charter organizations. And we've been a member of the Alliance for many years.
I can, one quick, every charter in the city paid dues last year. I'm happy to get off if you would like.
No, Terry, I don't mind you staying on. I just would ask that you not vote.
Okay.
All right. Could I get a motion to approve the charter, the Alliance dues?
I so move.
I have a second.
Sure. Second.
All right. Colette,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Emily,
Sorry, approved.
all right. Hadley,
Approved.
Lisa,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Tamika,
Approved.
and yes for Patrick also. The motion carries, so we are approved to pay that due. The next item on the agenda are our park results. So just kind of big picture. One thing that, and I'll let Cassie get into this, but big picture, I think what the results show is that we're moving in the right direction, but it also shows that the impact of COVID is a lot. It's going to take a lot more effort to get us back, or a lot more time and effort and energy to get us back to where we were. But we're moving in the right direction. And we also had some significant outliers with our park scores. Like we had a couple of students across the network that scored like some 5s in ELA and math and stuff. So we do have some really good students that are some outliers in our network also. So just wanted to point that out. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Cassie. I think I saw you join. So
Yeah, I'm actually going to kick us off, and then Cassie will pick up. Kira, would you be able to project the park PowerPoint? Thank you. Okay, perfect. If you advance to the next slide. Awesome. So, all right, so let's start just by some big picture context. What is park? Every year, all DC students, regardless of school, take a test in grades 3 through 8 and then high school that measures proficiency in math and ELA. Park is Common Core aligned, and it's meant to give an assessment across all schools about how well schools are doing at supporting students to learn in ways that put them on track to be successful in college without needing to do remedial coursework. So it's an incredibly helpful tool for families to get a sense of like how well their child is tracking towards college, and then also for schools to know how well we are doing at serving students, and then from school system and city level to have a sense of what's taking place across schools and where do we need to put in place additional policies or accountability or supports to make sure that all students get what they need. Park is scored on a basis of 1 to 5. We strive for all of our students to be at least a 4, which is an indicator that the student is on track to be able to enroll in college without the need for remedial courses. And though there's a lot of attention this year on the value of 3+ as well, which is also an important measure of whether or not students are getting what the skill building that they need. But for the purposes of this presentation, we are focused on 4+. Can you go to that? Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about citywide park trends in 2023. As a city, we continue to be less successful at supporting students of color, especially Black students. What you can see here are the proficiency levels in ELA and math, and you can see the incredible disparity between white students, where in 2023, 81.6% of white students scored a 4 or better in ELA, and 74.6 proficiency level in math. And that is significantly higher than like other groups, which is obviously really problematic and highlights the need for our city to do a better job of serving all students. Go to the next slide. This is also true that we as a city are underserving students who are economically disadvantaged, English learners, homeless, or have disabilities. The proficiency levels for all of those student subgroups are just much lower. And that's a real call to action for all schools across DC. Given what I just shared about the student subgroups, it's not surprising that there's very stark differences in park results by ward. Wards 5, 7, and 8 have lower proficiency levels overall in both ELA and math than other wards, particularly Ward 3. And that really just highlights like why DC Prep exists, to make sure that every student who might be kind of underserved in our city has access to a great school. And what you see here is the 2022-23 enrollment numbers. And you can see that we serve a higher percentage of at-risk students, 64% than the city. The city overall is like 46% across all public school students, regardless of district or charter. And the students that we serve are predominantly either Black or Latino. So I'm going to turn it over to Cassie to talk more specifically about our park results.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. So overall, our students had similar proficiency levels to students citywide, but we are growing faster. Our students are growing faster. And in particular, our students who are coded as economically disadvantaged significantly outperform peers citywide. So what this graph or this chart shows is that if you look at on ELA, which is on the far left, our 2022 results, we had 23% of students scoring 4+, but this past spring we had 31%. So we had a positive gain of 8% of students, which is great. And we had 8% positive gain in math as well. And that was much higher than the citywide average, where only 3% of students gained in ELA and 2% in math. So we feel, though the numbers are extremely low and not where we want them to be, we feel very excited about the growth that our students showed from the year after the pandemic to last year. And in particular, when you look at just our students who are economically disadvantaged or sometimes termed at risk, we had 10 percentage growth points in ELA and 9% in math, which was significantly higher than the city, where they were at 2% and 1%. Relative to students in the same ward, our students demonstrated stronger proficiency levels in 2023, though a lot more growth is still needed. So when you look at schools across Ward 5, where our Edgewood campuses are located, we scored significantly higher than all other Ward 5 schools in math and a little bit higher in literacy. In Ward 7, where our Benning campuses are, we scored significantly higher in both literacy and math, and same at our Anacostia schools when you compare it to all other schools in Ward 8 and how students did in Wards 5, 7, and 8. When we look at that showed a little bit of how did we perform relative to others in DC. We also examined how do our results stack up to what our students have achieved over time. And so I'll share a little bit about that. And of course, please feel free to ask questions. While our ELA scores are lower than pre-COVID, that is the light blue bars. 5 out of our 6 DC Prep campuses saw strong growth in 2023. So light blue is 2019, that's pre-COVID. Dark blue is 2022, and green is last year. So you can see at 5 of the 6 schools, we had significant growth in the percentage of students who scored 4+ in ELA. We see something similar in math. Our proficiency levels increased at all but one of our campuses, the same kind of trends. We are not where we were pre-COVID in 2019, but we are showing pretty significant growth at 5 of our 6 campuses from 2022's data. We also think about how does it vary by grade level and what can we learn about students who are with us over time. And so across the network, the percent of students proficient in ELA increased in all but 6th grade. So this chart really shows and illustrates the power of working with students over time. Our proficiency levels increased substantially in the senior academy. So you can see that by 7th and 8th grades, those dark blue bars are much higher and show a lot of exciting growth. In math, the next slide, we see a similar story across the network. The percent of students proficient in math increases everywhere. Notably, when you look at 8th grade, you might say, well, why is your 8th grade data lower? One thing that is unique about DC Prep and that we are very proud of is that every single one of our 8th graders takes the algebra test. We believe in algebra for all because we're trying to set the kids up on a path to be taking calculus by 12th grade so that they are on a college trajectory for math. And it's a higher bar than what is required. So a lot of 8th graders across the city are actually only taking the Math 8 exam, but ours are taking algebra. And so that's just notable as to why the data looks that way. But you can see the growth, and you can particularly see the growth over time. I wanted to share some of our campus highlights. Our AEC campus, where the students take the PARCC test in only the 3rd grade, we doubled the percent of students who were proficient in ELA. At AMC, we had a 4 times increase in the percentage of kids proficient in math, and we more than doubled the percentage of students proficient in ELA. At BEC, we saw a 3 times increase in the percentage of students proficient in ELA. At BMC, we saw ELA proficiency rates for 7th and 8th grade higher than they were pre-COVID, which was really exciting. At EEC, our elementary school that has the largest English language learner group outperformed the charter sector in both ELA and math when you look just at that subgroup of ELL or English language learner students. And at Edgewood Middle Campus, we increased the percentage of students proficient in ELA by more than 10 points in just 1 year. So I will close with how do our PARCC scores connect to our focus for this year. We get our data, now, but we anticipate the data, and it was in line with what we were expecting across the year based on our internal assessments. And so we are proud of our growth, but we know that a lot more is needed to get to pre-pandemic levels. Our school plan, as I shared with you all the last time we met, I can't remember what month that was, all adults for all students, and a real intensive focus on what is every adult doing? Do we know where our students' data is? Are we intentionally, planning small groups and meeting kids where they are at, providing more instructional resources, a focus on how do we grow teachers and coaching, which we call our continuous improvement cycle, and planning for the future. So that is our PARCC data, and I'm happy, me or Laura are happy to answer any questions.
Good progress.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just reiterate. Did you have something, Dan? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question. I was sort of on your intro, Patrick, you had sort of referenced, I think it was you, or how we do have some outliers who are scoring 5 and doing really well. Just curious, what kind of programs do we have to make sure we foster the highest performers so they can continue to perform and also not want to leave to go be in a different environment?
Yeah, that's a super question. I think the way our programming is designed, in particular for literacy and math, we have what we would call tier 1, which is where we're focused on like current grade level content, and students who are scoring 4 and 5 like last year, when they move into the new grade level, they find challenge with the tier 1 content, because in literacy, you're reading all new text with all new like domains of learning. And our domains, we've really tried to make them robust and interesting and exciting for kids to engage in. And in math, every year in math, it's pretty much brand new content, even though it does build. And then we have what we call tier 2, which is small group time. And every day all kids are in small group time. And so that would be a space where students who are higher performers will be getting like something different based on where they are. And that happens every day for ELA and math. Then, of course, we have science programming, which we adopted a really fabulous new science curriculum and program this year, which we're seeing the kids get really excited about, and I think is also a good kind of stretch opportunity for kids. And we have social studies and all of our other program as well. But I think we have spaces within our program that we're really trying to like meet kids where they're at and do a lot of like small group and pushes.
And Dan, I'll say, like, as an example, my 6th grader is doing very well in math, and in small group time, they pull him and a couple of other students out and they give them some different work, because I mean, we just had back to school night. So it's just talking to his teacher. So he said what they do is they give them a set of work, and there are some students that will get through that work very quickly. And then they go to this computer program called iExcel, and then that progresses them even further. So in that tier 2 time that Cassie's mentioning is where the children get an opportunity. So children that need a lot more help and those that are going a little bit faster, they're pushed a little bit harder also.
It's great. Thank you.
And just as a reminder, every year we set goals, and when we were coming back from the pandemic, we knew that it was going to take time to be able to rebuild. And we're trying really hard to craft like a thoughtful progression so that each year there's like a stretch but achievable goal for our teachers. And right now we're on track to be able to hit where we set our targets by next school year. And that is, it's pushing, right? It's not as fast as any of us would like, but we are on track for the goals that we've set out.
And the other thing, Laura, I think we were talking about earlier too, was that like each student is tracked individually, specifically for, like the kids that have been with us for a long time. Obviously we can just track that data, and there's like improvement there also. So as an aggregate, but also you can look individually at the students and stuff, so see how they're doing. Any more questions on that? Again, I would just say thanks for all of the hard work. And I think, again, when I originally saw the data, my thoughts were, the thing that hit me the most was that, wow, everyone talked about that it would take a long time to catch up for COVID, but I think the data just like really shows that. So I think we have a plan to get back to our pre-pandemic, but it may just take a little bit longer than what we thought, because obviously we just didn't know how big of an impact it was. And I think that now that we have the data, we've seen like, oh yeah, it's been a huge impact, but we'll get back there and stuff. So.
But it's still great progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
At it. I mean, I hope we don't get lost on that. It's really great progress. So.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. All
Sorry,
right.
everybody.
I have a
Mhm.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi. So, pardon, I missed the final meeting. So this was already discussed. Pardon the question. So I know that in the last meeting before last, we talked about the coaching for the students, and I know, along with our results for the students, the momentum for our current teachers and our new teachers. Do we still have the coaching program in place?
Yes, we definitely do. So all of our teachers receive a coach. We spend a lot of time in the summer training up our coaches and making adjustments to our coaching model. All of our coaches get coaching. So their primary support is their principal, but if their principal is new, then they will often get someone from our academic team also helping them. And our academic team also helps the coaches and the teachers in content specific ways. So like our director of math and science, Shantae Edmonds, she provides coaching to the math coaches at each of the schools as well. So she's helping build their content knowledge, their skills to be really effective coaches. And the teachers receive feedback really regularly. It is very differentiated. So a very kind of effective, more veteran teacher may receive coaching that is less frequent. It might be more like really driven by what the teacher really wants to work on, inquiry, and they design a coaching plan together, versus a newer teacher who has a lot less experience. They might be getting like daily coaching. They might be doing lesson planning with their coach, preparing materials together, walking through like how to use their non-instructional time, make sure you're updating your grade book, make sure you're calling these parents. So it's a pretty comprehensive coaching model, and it's still a really big area of focus for us.
And
Okay, thank you.
one of the things that we track in our like executive team dashboard is what percent of our teachers and school leaders have received an individual development plan feedback, which means like not only did somebody come into your classroom, but they took the time to like actually write formal feedback for you, so that way you know what's going well and where you need to focus. And across our teachers, at almost all of our schools, there was like 95% or more of teachers who had one of those formal entries this month. And so that's something that we're constantly trying to make sure that teachers are receiving, because we know it's such an important element of their success and their feeling and a sense of investment in that we care about them and that we want them to continue to grow. We know that our teachers care about ongoing learning.
Okay. Any more questions?
Quick question, Patrick.
Uh-huh.
Cassie and Laura, it sounds like you guys are doing a great job trying to balance recognizing that there's so much more to do and is not where we want kids to be, and also, trying to figure out, are we on the right track and how to show momentum to everyone. And do you feel like the students, the parents, and the faculty received the test scores with that kind of messaging? So that they kind of felt like, okay, encouraged, we're coming back, we have a lot more to do. They kind of heard both those messages as well.
Yeah, I think it is hard. Working in schools right now is very hard. There's our staff, I think our staff feel really invested in helping kids grow. We have a very, very mission aligned staff. They all want the kids to do better, and they feel really motivated by that. And I think we're at a good place in terms of staff being really driven by outcomes for kids, and that better outcomes for kids means a better life trajectory and means all of the things that DC Prep was founded for. And that in and of itself, to me, is a great place to be, because coming out of the pandemic, there was hesitation to push on that, because you felt like the kids have been through so much, the parents have been through so much. Let's just only focus on like, is everyone okay? And wellness and all of that. And so I think we are in a good place in terms of still really the staff feeling really invested in kids growing and doing well. and still maintaining and how do we make sure that they love school, that school is joyful, that it is fun, that they are okay, that we have some good wellness initiatives. So I do feel like we're in a good spot and people are motivated, but it is not easy. There's a lot for an individual teacher to manage when they think about the makeup of a classroom and all of the need socially, emotionally, academically across one classroom. And it's different on every grade and it's different in every subject area, but it's a very hard time to be a teacher. But I think our staff is feeling appropriately motivated and unified.
And Emily, I would say, my hand is not on the pulse as much as Cassie and Laura's is, but every year before the school year kicks off, I try to go to all of the schools and just interact with the teachers and try to give them a before year kickoff and stuff. And this year when I went, it was still before school started, but it was the day that park scores could be released. And my informal data point is they all seemed excited about the progress. They recognized the fact that, hey, we had a lot of work to do, but just showing that growth, the teachers that I interacted with in the formal and informal settings seem to be motivated and excited about that. It's hey, it's a tough job, but we are making progress and stuff. So that was my sense from just interacting with them and talking with them.
What about from the parent standpoint, which was something was following up from Emily? Was there any kind of feedback? I mean, are they as focused on those scores? Is there a direct thought process between the value of the overall experience and those scores as a result, as a product? They just know that it's a good program and they're moving forward and they can see the progress. I mean, I guess my question is what was the feedback from the parents, if any?
Sorry, Laura.
Go, Tamika.
Oh, I was going to say, well, I'll go after you. I haven't heard any feedback so far on the test scores. I also haven't asked, so I don't have any on that. I've received other feedback, but I think that's more fitting for the family briefing that we'll talk about today. I've received other feedback on other topics from parents so far.
Maybe that's a good place to transition us because there is feedback. I think when you look at the feedback that we got from families at this, we just administered a big survey, and I think it sheds some light on your question. So maybe let's go there unless there's any other burning questions. Okay, Kara, can you put up the Family Experience Task Force data? Great, thank you. Okay, so the quick framing here. One of the things that we've been talking about as a significant driver of what we do next is really making sure that we are rooting all of our decisions in what is it that families want for their children. And so we have designed a Family Experience Task Force this year. The Family Experience Task Force is going to be gathering and reviewing input from families about what families want for their child. We are going to be working to really understand what do families mean when they say that they care about a strong academic program. And they're going to be putting together a recommendation for our E-team to incorporate into our strategic planning process. We had the first task force meeting today. It was really fun to get this group together because for the first time, you've heard us talk many times about task forces. This was the first time that we had a task force that was open to parents who are not also DC Prep staff members. And so we had a couple of parents who joined us and a number of staff members from across the network, many of whom are parents of DC Preppies in addition to being staff members. So it was fun to kind of kick that off. I'm going to share with you some of the data that we looked at today and explain kind of where we will go next. Okay, so on the next slide, at Back to School Night last week, we administered a short survey to families. We encouraged everyone who came to participate. Obviously, not everybody did participate, but we did have more than 300 families who responded to the survey. Many have children at more than one school, so like AEC and AMC, but this was the distribution of responses that we got from across our campuses. On the next slide, one of the first questions that we asked families was, what are the top 3 factors that shaped your thinking when you made the decision about where to enroll your child in school? And so we gave options, and families could choose up to 3 different areas that they really prioritized. Not surprisingly, the number 1 focus from our families was a strong academic program. So our family said that was like a huge factor in my decision about where to enroll my child. But other factors that were also pretty important were teacher quality, social emotional supports, and school safety. So that doesn't mean that these other areas were not important. It just means that fewer families put that in their top 3. Okay, next slide. We also cut the data by cluster. And so what we see here is the general trend that we just saw a second ago basically holds across campuses. So across all of our campuses, all of our families say that the number 1 thing that they were looking for when making their decision about where to enroll their child is academic results. But teacher quality, social emotional support, school safety are all also important. Across our campuses, our families, the next question that we asked after saying like, what did you really care about when you enrolled your child? We said, okay, your child is with us now. What's going well right now? And families could choose up to 3 things that were going well. Families, the most often selected response was communication with teachers in school and academic results. So I think that gets to your question, Pam, was that families, the majority of families who completed the survey do seem to think that academic results are going well. But that's not 100%, right? So that is something that's important. And then other things that seem to be important is teacher quality and safety procedures and preparedness. Also got a fair number of responses as to something that's going well. What I said a second ago about, are there differences across campuses? Yes, there are differences across campuses, but in general, I would say across all of our campuses, there seems to be relatively similar views about things that are going well across the network. If you go to the next slide, some of the things to point out for you. There is some relative alignment between why families chose DC Prep and what's going well, right? Families said academics is really important. They also said that academics is something that's going well with us. One thing to note is communication wasn't a choice in the original question that we asked. So like where to enroll your child, we didn't say communication with teachers and staff. And so it was an option in the second question about what's going well. And so a question that we had as we were talking about the data as an executive team was, did families view communication as a proxy for teacher quality? And so like if we didn't offer communication as an option, would we have more parents who selected the teacher quality bar, for example? Families were more likely to choose strong academics, teacher quality, social emotional supports, and school safety as their top factors in shaping their school choice. But social emotional program is ranked relatively lower in terms of what's going well, which is something for us to think about to understand why is that? And then a larger percentage of families chose strong academics as a reason to choose DC Prep. So like 93% of families chose that as one of their top factors. But only 74% of families chose academics as one of the things that's going really well, right? And so there's like a little bit of a difference there, which is worth paying attention to. On the next slide, families, we asked families, okay, you've told us what was important in your school choice. You've told us about what's going well. Now tell us, what do you want us to prioritize to have the biggest impact over the coming years? And so what families prioritized here was academics and course diversity. Those seem kind of like the two front runners about things that families really wanted us to focus on in the future. On the next slide, there were some important differences by cluster about, things that were, relatively more or less important. But I guess I would say generally there's a lot more alignment than difference, but there are some things that spike. For example, under safety procedures, there's a lot more emphasis there at Edgewood than at our other campuses. And I think, we have some hypotheses about like why that is, because there were a lot of families who then talked about like arrival, dismissal, like walking, kind of like safety in the neighborhood around the school. So that was like relevant. There was also more interest in projects and aftercare at Anacostia and Benning relative to Edgewood, right? So like, there's like some differences around on the margin, but I would say more similarity than differences. To try and get really specific, what we asked families was, okay, in the area that you most want us to prioritize, what would you most want to be different in 2 years? And we gave them kind of like an open response, and we asked them to like describe what would be different in 2 years if we focused on the thing that they cared about most. And then I went through and tried to code the answers into different categories. There was a lot of families who said something about academics, for example, academics always, right? That was the type of response that they gave. We had a number who I coded it as something related to logistics, arrival or dismissal, related to, in particular at Edgewood. We had a number of families who said something about course diversity, particularly around foreign language. We had families who talked about the need for more extracurriculars. Some who talked about social emotional, but not always in those words. Like we had some who said, I want my child to be able to communicate better. And then some who talked about safety, either in terms of like location of the school building, prevalence of crossing guards, or just like general blanket safety and preparedness. So this gives us a little bit more flavor, but there's still like a whole bunch of questions about like what to make of this data. And so that's really where we're going to be going next. And so, yes, thank you.
Well, Laura, one question about the results. I forget what percentage response rate you said, and this is probably an unfair question, but do you have any sort of hypothesis on whether or not there's biases in terms of the people who took the effort and are engaged enough to respond, that they would view things differently than the large percentage who didn't respond?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. So in the task force today, we were talking a lot about like, how can we try and get more responses from the families who didn't participate in the survey? And we came up with a lot of really thoughtful, and the group came up with a lot of really thoughtful ideas about how to try and encourage more families to come to some of the focus groups that we're going to be hosting. But I think to your question, which is like, is there a bias in who answered? I'm sure there is, right? Like, but I don't know in what direction, right? Because you could either imagine it being parents who are like really invested and happy, right? And we did have some of those who said like, don't change anything. Like, I'm very happy. And then I'm sure that there were some who might be like less satisfied, who want to participate in the survey because they really want something to be different. But I can't tell you what's most driving the families who didn't participate. I don't know. And so I think the question would be, we asked families who filled out the survey. They had the option to fill it out anonymously, but we also said, would you be willing to participate in a follow-up conversation? And if so, we need your name and contact information. One of the things that we could do now is try and say, okay, principals, based on who filled out the survey, like, are there families that are top of mind for you that you think their voice is not represented here? What kind of outreach could we do in order to try to encourage more participation in the focus groups? So we will have focus groups, and then we will also have individual, like, one-on-one listening, like, interviews. And so hopefully between the two, we'll be able to get more. We certainly won't reach everyone, but hopefully we'll be able to get more coverage of the families that are shaping our decisions.
Great. I'll tell you that Laura reached out after she didn't get the numbers that she wanted for the response. And she was like, hey, she's like, when are you going to do your survey? And I was like, well, I said, it was back to school night. So as a parent, I was like, I really didn't care about the survey right then and there. I was really trying to, go grab go talk to the teachers. And I was like, I figured I would do it later, which is what I did. But with that, I was telling Laura, because the survey was so quick, it was less than like 4 or 5 minutes. Usually on those back to school nights, they have first a general assembly. I said, hey, going forward, if we have those opportunities, then maybe just put some time there and say, hey, would you parents please fill it out right now before you go talk to your students, because it was very quick. It took less than 5 minutes to do. But just as a parent, from my experience, when I scanned it, I was like, okay, like, I'm here to go talk to the teachers. I'm not here to do a survey right now. So I'll get to a survey when I can, but right now I'm really going to try to go talk to my son's teachers and stuff. And I don't know, Tamika, what was your experience?
Yes, mine was the same, because it was kind of a rush time frame. It felt like I was trying to fill out the survey, but then I was also trying to meet with the teachers because that was the opportunity to do so. So it felt rushed, but I knew, okay, I got to fill the survey out. So I think even on one of my responses, because I was trying to get to all of the teachers, I said, I can answer more on the task force. Like, already signed me up. I can give more there, because I was trying to get to all of their teachers. And I did not get to all of the teachers, because I was trying to do both at one time.
All right, Laura, back to you.
Thanks. Okay, next slide is what happens next. So today, like I said, we had our first task force meeting. In the task force, we spent time really trying to prepare for the family listening sessions to make sure that we're asking really thoughtful questions to better understand what families really care about and are trying to solve for. And we also spent a lot of time trying to talk about how are we going to get more families to come. And the big push that I made for the task force was, like, you need to talk to people, because like another email or like outreach from me is not going to get people to come to these sessions. And so it needs to be like a both and. So we're going to try and come up with more incentives to encourage families to come and participate. But that is the big thing that we'll need to tackle next, is the family listening sessions, and then some one-on-one interviews. We will come up with a plan to make sure that we're trying to cover families that we might not otherwise be able to reach. Not, everyone, but hopefully at least, trying to identify where might we be missing voices. And then we will come back together for a second task force meeting in late October, where we will review the data from the listening sessions and the interviews to then be able to try and pull out trends and create some recommendations for the executive team. So I look forward to sharing that at our November board meeting. Any other questions from you all?
I didn't have a question, but I did want to offer the feedback so far that I received with a few one-on-ones. This feedback came from AEC and AMC parents. The biggest thing I heard so far was about the AEC drop-off procedures. I know the parent she's talking now to Ms. Kuzma, about it, and I told her, follow up with me, once that conversation has been had. But I know I heard from multiple parents about the procedure. I mean, the dismissal procedures primarily. That AEC is a little, just because of that street, it's a little chaotic with dismissal. And then same thing for AMC, but AMC has a different, setup as far as not the one-way street. I mean, that small street, that's a little different. But then I also heard about birthday celebrations. That has been an ongoing topic that was brought up from multiple parents about being able to celebrate their children at school. A lot of the children's parents, a lot of the children's friends are primarily at school. And so when they don't get the opportunity to celebrate at school, that has been ongoing feedback that I've heard as well from the parents.
That's helpful. I appreciate you sharing that. And I will make sure that we are circling back with Ms. Kuzma and the ops team about the dismissal. And then the birthday celebrations is a tricky one. So maybe Cassie, do you want to share a little bit about rationale?
Sure. Yeah, we can celebrate birthdays and encourage that. We have two considerations that we have communicated to parents in the orientations and in the handbook. One is food allergies. So we don't want parents to bring in homemade cupcakes because we don't know the kids' like food allergies. So we've said, if you want to celebrate your kid's birthday, please, you could bring a pencil, you could bring a sticker, you could bring nothing. We also think about equity. So we don't want a parent that brings a huge birthday party with balloons and presents for the class, and then the next kid next week gets nothing. So we've tried to have it be more like organized by the school to think about, okay, when it's kids' birthdays, they get a crown from the teacher, the whole class sings happy birthday to them. So we try to have like rituals and routines that are a little bit more consistent across the school so that there is equity as much as possible. But we definitely want to celebrate the kids. We just don't want there to be like one massive birthday party and then the next kid doesn't have anything for their birthday.
Yeah. And so thanks for sharing that context, Cassie. And I think what I'm hearing is a little bit of, I think just I'm left with curiosity, right? So like, is it that the rationale that we've named around celebrations is not landing, or is it that we haven't done a good job of communicating rationale, right? And so I think there's probably just some things for us just to like learn more about to figure out why that's like a point of feedback that's cropping up. So I really appreciate you naming it, Tamika, because then it gives us a chance to think about like, how do we understand and contextualize like, how widespread is this, and like why is it a point of feedback? Should we move to the next topic?
Yeah, you complete there?
Absolutely. And I know from the last parent that I spoke with, it was because they yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so it sounds like it's probably just some frustration around like, if I think I'm following the policy and then you're telling me I'm not following the policy, like that would be frustrating. So I can understand that. So we'll take that as like a, what do we need to do to make sure that we're not frustrating parents, and making sure that we're both clear in communicating the policies, the why behind the policies, and listening if there's ways in which the policies are not landing. So, okay. Moving to the next topic. And I think we're going to try and we're at 6:15. I want to try and keep the next topic to like probably 10 minutes or less.
That's fine. I guess we can just turn it over to you, Cassie.
Great. Kira, do you mind showing the special POPs slide deck?
Yes. Can you give me access?
Sure. Laura
Thank you.
will have to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Hold on.
Okay, so I was asked to bring some thoughts for you all on our special populations programming. I actually think this might be, I don't know if Kira has the right link. I think she does. Okay.
All right, Kira, you should have access.
No. Could you refresh it again?
Do you want me to present?
I can, do you want me to? I can also. Great, thank you so much. Okay, so to start with, we wanted to share a little bit about our special populations programming and work at DC Prep because it's such a huge part of our school plan. We've shared with you that our school plan for this year is all adults for all students, mission possible, and we're really thinking about what we do for our most diverse learners is good for all kids. And so we're thinking about there is no one size fits all learner in our building. And that is especially true with our special population. So we have students who are special education students. They qualify for an IEP under one of 13 disability types listed in IDEA. Students with an IEP must have a demonstrated impact on their learning as a result of their disability. We also have students who have what's called a 504 plan. These students have had a major life impairment that can interfere with their ability to access learning. They generally require accommodations like extended breaks. And our third category is English language learners. So this chart shows who we serve at DC Prep within those categories. So across our organization, you can see we have somewhere between 40 and 50 kids at every campus with IDPs, upwards of 60 at some campuses, with 300 students overall across the organization. We have 39 students who have 504 plans. We have 104 English language learners. So English is not their first language and they are still learning it. Overall, our students with IEPs total percentage of our population is about 14%. So you can see it varies from 11% at Anacostia and Benning elementary schools and all the way up to about 16, 17, 18% at our middle schools. For context and how that compares, about 15% of students enrolled in public schools across the country would be considered students who have disabilities. So we are kind of right in that same ballpark, around 15%. Many schools across the country are struggling to hire special education professionals. In recent research has shown that like 40% of public schools had teaching vacancies within special education. The most common type of disabilities for students are specific learning disabilities like dyslexia, and across the country, we're seeing more and more students being diagnosed with autism. So on the next slide, I wanted to share a little bit about who do we serve at DC Prep, what is our continuum of services, why do we ground in inclusion, and why is this so important for us at DC Prep? Who do we serve? I shared the overall numbers and the percentages. If you can go to the next one, Kira, thank you. We have, of our students who have IEPs, which are the ones that I'm going to zoom in on today, we're not going to spend as much time on students who have 504 plans or who are considered English language learners. I'm going to spend most of our time on students who have IEPs. We have about 23% of them have a speech and language impairment. Another 20% have a specific learning disability. 15% have multiple disabilities, and about 15% have other health impairment. And you can see on the right side what kinds of services we often offer to kids based on their disability. Our approach to special education is grounded in our values. So we believe in an inclusion model because our values of we belong together. We think about programming to support all learners and have all kids have access. Our value of we do the work. We actively include diverse learners through the mindsets that we want to build. We want to have students of diverse learning profiles in our classrooms, and we want them to feel included. And we aim high. We believe that through effort, focus, support, intentionality, all kids can achieve goals. Excuse me. This is our special education continuum of services, which we launched in 21-22. It's a continuum. So we're always looking to have students served on the least restrictive environment, which means that when you have an IEP, that you are with your peers for the most amount of time possible, and you're not being pulled out, you're being included, and you're being supported within that model. Someone once described it to me like if you took your child to a movie and you were in the movie theater and they didn't understand something and they needed the plot explained, you wouldn't pull them out into the hallway to explain the plot for 5 minutes and then go back in. You would whisper in their ear so that they could stay included. And that's kind of like a helpful analogy of like what we believe when we think of our inclusion model and the least restricted environment. So on the far left side, we have special education inclusion teachers. We're doing inclusion services where they're getting small groups, they're getting a teacher circulating, giving them feedback, giving them accommodated work, but they're working towards the same goals. They just might be doing it in a different way. So if it's a math lesson on fractions, they might be having different manipulatives or a whiteboard out and doing the same work at a small table with support. Then if you need more support, according to your IEP, you might have pull-out services. We have academic and behavioral specialists. We have related service providers like occupational therapists, speech and language therapists that would be pulling kids out and providing like more specific support based on their diagnoses. As you move further along the continuum, if that is not adequate and your IEP mandates or says that you need even more support, you might be on an intensive or modified program. So you're working even more with our specialists. You might have an academic intervention fellow, which is sometimes known as like a one-on-one, or we'll have one that works with 2 kids. And if none of that is really working and the multidisciplinary team, which includes your parents, supports it, we might pursue a non-public day school placement. But that is kind of the most restrictive end of our continuum. The next, I think this is maybe just like a zoom in. The high quality inclusion that serves the majority of our students with IEPs. That's where we spend a lot of our time and energy and effort trying to really shore up, because the better that we are doing inclusion work, the less likely we are to need the more intensive supports for children. In the more restrictive end of the continuum, where we have specialists and or intensified modified programming, this is in addition to the inclusion services. It does not replace it. So they would be getting their pull-out at different times. They would still be in the inclusion environment, accessing the same grade level work. I spoke about the non-public day school. That would be, that is it's less than 5% of our population. It's even smaller, and that is when we have really kind of exhausted our continuum of services at our LEA. And the multidisciplinary team, or the MDT team, which includes the parent and specialists and all the people who work with the child, and it even includes someone from OSSE, is helping to determine if there is a placement that would be better suited for them. They still stay on our record. We still are managing them throughout, even if they move to a non-public day school. So we have a lot of roles who serve our expanded SPED continuum. We have our special education inclusion teachers who are in the classroom, co-teaching, pulling small groups. They are equals. They are, on the same pay scale as the general education teachers. We have academic intervention fellows who are the dedicated aides. We have specialists, academic and behavioral specialists at every school. We have a licensed clinician at every school who's designing and delivering counseling. And we have our special education coordinators who serve on our leadership team. They're on the core team and they manage all of the program and all of the pieces that come together. I wanted to show very briefly what this might look like in a classroom. This is a little bit of how I answered Emily's question when she said, how are people managing all of this? It's a lot, but this is how it kind of plays out. This is a total example. It's very illustrative. Imagine one of our third grades has 73 kids across the whole grade. If that's true, approximately 16% of the kids have IEPs, so that's maybe 12 kids. We have 3 homerooms on the third grade. We would actually split those 12 kids across 2 homerooms instead of 3, so that we can provide more support. If we split across 3, then we have to split our adults more. So we might put 7 in one homeroom, 5 in another. We're very strategic about how we group the kids and roster them across our homerooms. And this is an example of how those in one homeroom, this is the one that has the 7, you might have a kid who has 2 hour or 12 hours of need on their IEP. They're different levels, 1 through 4. And so you can see some kids need 11 or 12 hours of specialized instruction, occupational therapy. You can see student D who has emotional disturbance. They might have this academic intervention fellow and their IEP actually says they require 50 hours of specialized support on their IEP versus some other kids have way fewer. There's a student who really, the primary thing that they need is counseling from the behavior support. So we'll have these 7 kids, one of them is speech only, whereas 6 of them need small group and lots of academic support. And then maybe another 6 have related services. They sometimes have counseling once a week or they have occupational therapy, but they're all included in the same homeroom with the general education students. Our school plan, which I've referenced now a lot, Mission Possible, All Adults for All Students, it is all about how are we helping all of our kids do well. And so our inclusion model is really critical to that. If we can help our students who have the greatest need, then we know we are helping all students perform really well. And the key initiatives that we have this year that are focused on students who have IEPs and have special needs are this focus on adult collaboration and what is the vision for inclusion and for how adults should work together. We are delivering on professional development this year that's about learning profiles so that we can build people's knowledge of if I have a student who has a speech language impediment in my classroom, what are strategies that I can use that would help that child? We are providing a lot of updated materials to support instruction and increase access. So for example, in math, our teachers receive 3 different sets of materials to help them achieve the same objective. So my co-teacher and I could be thinking about, you're going to be working with this small group. You should do it using the fractions blocks at the kidney table. I'm going to work with this group on the same objective, but we're going to be using rulers and whiteboards. Differentiated professional development. So how I answered the question earlier about coaching, we're thinking about what do different teachers need to help kids with special needs. So the special ed inclusion teachers might need to learn and practice and try different strategies than other teachers. And we're really emphasizing strong attendance because we know with both attendance and strong family communication and partnership, our students can soar. So those are our key initiatives. And I'm happy, I know Laura wanted this to be 10 minutes, but if there are any questions about Special Pops, I'm very happy to answer them now.
Thank you, Cassie. And I'm going to actually suggest if you have questions, reach out to me. We can build it into a future board meeting. But right now, I want to keep us moving. Emily, do you want to tee up the governance votes?
Yeah. So we have 2 board members who have completed 1 term, and we would love them to serve another term. Colette Bruce and Ahmad Haj, and they're willing to do so. So should we go ahead and take those votes right now, Laura? Okay.
Yes.
So I guess Colette and Ahmad, do you want to drop off for like 3 minutes? And I will,
Sure.
let me email you guys.
Okay.
I don't know that, I think I have both your texts, but I'll just email you. Check your email and come back in. Okay.
Great. All
Okay.
right.
Okay. Great. Bye.
Thank you. So would someone like to,
Move approval for both.
Harry always cuts the chase. I can't remember how there's a certain process we need to follow from the open. I don't think so. So if we have slate, should we do it as a slate?
Yeah, I think we can do it as a slate.
Okay.
So I think Terry's put a motion on the floor.
I'll second it.
Second.
Okay, so I'll call the roll. Dan,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Hadley,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Tamika,
Yes.
and Patrick's yes also. So the yes is carried. So they are approved for another term.
Great news.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Just email them.
Okay, I think at this point we would be able to go into closed session.
Do we want to wait till they come back first, or?
Yes, I think that sounds good.
I'm going to try texting now. Hold on. Does someone need to let them back in? Someone's on that, right?
Nobody has requested to join yet.
I don't think they've changed their mind. Okay, there's Ahmad. Congratulations, Ahmad.
I figured we were back in because you told us to get back on the Zoom. God have asked us to get back on.
Yay, Ahmad!
Congrats and thank you. And
I'm happy to be back. Great organization.
Should we play Welcome Back, Carter? You know the theme song?
I love that song.
Is that Colette?
Yay, Colette!
Yay, Colette. Welcome back.
Congratulations. Thank you.
You're back on.
Can we find out if anyone voted against us? Isn't that it?
It was a tough call.
Okay.
We're very glad to have you both.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Could I get a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
All right. So Colette. Ahmad.
Yes.
All right. Hadley.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Lisa. Pam.
Yes.
Tamika.
Yes.
Terry.
Yes.
And a yes for Patrick also. So I guess we will now go into closed session.